Hello, welcome to another episode of Sports and Songs podcast. We're on season 3. This is episode number 48, the Songs edition. Edition only for songs, music, and albums. We're your hosts, Dan and Andy. Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. Today is October 20th, 2022. We've got a special guest with us. Jeff will be joining us here. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. We're doing good. We're going to be doing an album review today. The topic is Motley Crue. And Jeff here is lead singer in a Motley Crue tribute band. And Andy, tell us a little bit of how you found these guys on social media.
One day, busy at work, I was scrolling through Facebook and came across Theater of Pain on one of the tribute sites and saw some of their stuff and saw some of Jeff's posts. And dropped him a link and said, "Hey, would you like to be on our happy little podcast we have here?" And that we do local bands, local tribute bands, and asked him to be on. And it was also some comments on someone did a review. It was an anniversary of the Theater of Pain album had come out. And there were some comments on there. We kind of went off of that too for the idea.
Well, that is good. We've got. You have anything to interject there, Jeff?
Well, yeah, just that as he started to allude to there, the name of our tribute band is Theater of Pain.
Okay. See, this is awesome. Easy to remember for the listeners out there. Theater of Pain here in the Twin Cities.
Connected to the album there, of course.
That's right.
Well, we lucked out on the timing because the album review this week is Theater of Pain by Motley Crue. I'll get started here with the overview, guys, and what we'll have is Jeff do the track listing song by song, and then we'll interject with personal opinions on each of these songs. But I'll give it overview first here of the album itself. I'll bring it up on the screen. Very iconic album, the Motley Crue Theater of Pain here. Now let's see how this looks here. There we go. And so Theater of Pain was the third studio album by American heavy metal band Motley Crue, released June of '85. And let's see, one more thing. There we go. I'll get this banner off the page. How does that look? Is that look, Andy? We got the Theater of Pain. So we got the masks there. That's the Motley Crue Theater of Pain album cover. Now, this was released in the aftermath of lead vocalist Vince Neil's arrest for manslaughter on a drunk driving charge. This album,
that's right.
This album marked the beginning of the band's transition, also away from the traditional heavy metal sound of Too Fast for Love and Shout at the Devil, towards a more glam metal style. Do you agree with that, Jeff?
I would say it was a little bit of their attempt to diverge away from this, really heavy metal. And, you just mentioned the fact that Vince had spent some time in jail. He had as a passenger in his car when he wrecked was the guitar player from, his name was Razzle.
Handy Rocks.
Oh, Hanoi Rocks. Yes.
Oh, Hanoi Rocks, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Hanoi Rocks. And they were an up-and-coming band that was doing really well. And Razzle's untimely death definitely put a crimp on their career. Vince Neil ended up doing only 30 days in jail for that, and it was the inspiration for a handful of songs.
Yeah, it's the Theater of Pain contains the hit singles "Smokin' in the Boys' Room" and the power ballad "Home Sweet Home." And so this was, this was recorded in Hollywood. It's considered the genre here is glam metal. The album length is 35 minutes, 16 seconds, and it was produced out on Elektra with Tom Werman, producer. Any other comments on there, Jeff, as far as that information?
Home Sweet Home was their biggest hit. I don't think there's ever been a Motley Crue song that charted higher on the top 40. They tend to end all their concerts with it. Very iconic song. It was remade again around 1990, I'm guessing, more or less, somewhere in there, and re-released, a big MTV hit. and Smoking in the Boys' Room was the same thing. Theater of Pain is a lot of times it's kind of considered by members of the band to be one of their least favorite albums from that period, although I think there's a lot of good tracks on it. It's one of those albums that put them on the charts, it did put them on the map, even in a more solid way than they had been before. In my opinion, it is a good album that stands the test of time.
Yes, and what it did was, it followed up on, this was early 85 when Motley Crue entered the studio to begin recording the follow-up to their highly successful 1983 Shout at the Devil. That album sold 4 million copies. That also established the band as one of the world's top recording acts. And so they followed up with this, and this also sold 4 times platinum. Now, the interesting thing is the band enjoyed a tumultuous 2 years in the wake of Shout at the Devil's unexpected success. And the band's fondness for partying and sex earned them a reputation as a legitimate dangerous band, culminating in that December 1984 car crash where Razzle was killed and Vince Neil was driving that vehicle. On top of Neil's troubles, the band's founder and primary songwriter Nikki Sixx developed a heroin addiction, which was beginning to spiral out of control at this time. Further adding to the turmoil, the band had been seriously considering replacing guitarist Mick Mars. And so it was with those uncertainties hanging over the band that Theater of Pain's recording began in January 85. The working album title was Entertainment or Death that Nikki Sixx came up with. And then right prior to the release, they changed it to Theater of Pain. Any comments there? We got Nikki Sixx developing the heroin. These guys were out of control. If you read the book, The Dirt by Motley Crue, it goes into a lot of these stories, a lot of these things on tour and the personal lives of these guys around this time.
Yeah, there's not much more to add to it. Everybody knows the story of Nikki Sixx and his near-death overdose experiences in '87. Which motivated him to get sober. Whether or not he really did get sober at that point in time is a matter of argument, I've heard amongst some circles, because he's kind of claimed that he's been completely sober and clean since then, but there's also people that will put that rumor aside and say, oh, no. A bad boy is still a bad boy every now and then.
Yes,
but
it's interesting.
I don't know. I've never met any of the guys in the band, so I'm just a fan like everybody else. And you probably know more details than I do there, what you were reading out of Wikipedia. I could not have told you there was 4 million copies sold.
Yeah, it's interesting, and like it said too here on the website, it was unexpected success. They were not planning to take the world by storm with that Shout at the Devil album, but boy, did it do well. Now they came in and recorded this album and included a cover song. Smoking in the Boys' Room. It was Vince Neil's idea to do that back when the band first got together, and the rest of the guys were. They were like, I don't think that's not going to work. It's a cover from the Brownsville Station Band from 1973.
There's another story that goes along with that, how that song came to be, and that it has a local tie. There used to be a band here in the Twin Cities that was called Obsession, and then later they went to do originals and they changed the name to Funhouse. But while they were still under the name Obsession, they did a tour through Los Angeles playing some shows. And I went to high school with the bass player in that band, so I knew these guys really well. And they were in Los Angeles performing off and on for a couple of years, 83 and 84. And a couple of the guys in that band have claimed that they saw Vince Neil and Nikki Sixx together when they were in the club actually watching Obsession perform. Now, sometimes people will exaggerate and try to get themselves a little extra credit, but when that song came out in '85, some of the guys were around, from that band were trying to claim credit for having given Motley Crue the inspiration to remake that song.
I see.
Like I said, whether or not it's true, who knows? But they may very well have, been listening to Vince previously talking about that song, as I'm sure they've talked about lots of songs, of course, and perhaps seeing a band do it. And Obsession was a band that was, they were very hard rock, heavy metal, glam kind of orientated, a lot of Smoke Bombs, a lot of light shows, playing all that kind of music, Def Leppard and Kiss and that sort of thing. So, and I can well remember they were doing that song before Motley Crue came out with it.
Interesting. And then, the ballad, the power ballad "Home Sweet Home" was big, but that was really a change. Also, something that was not in their albums in the past, not released as a single. They never had any power ballads, and so that was a different thing as well to be added into the mix.
Yeah. I imagine that that may have been part of the reason why they did it, because it is kind of credited as being one of the first quote-unquote power ballads, because it goes from a gentle piano and vocal to really driving guitar solo.
Yep, that is correct. So the band, for those listeners that do not know, it's Vince Neil on vocals, Mick Mars guitars, Nikki Sixx bass, and Tommy Lee drums. And so the track listing, Jeff, if you could go through the track listing song by song and give us some of your little take on some of these songs here from this album.
Well, the first song is called City Boy Blues, and I think it was probably not the best song to start an album off with. It's, first of all, it's not a blues kind of a number. It's a pretty herky-jerky kind of fast, glam rock. So I always kind of felt like that song was, misnamed, and it's actually not a bad song, but it's definitely not one of my favorites on the album. And typically, you try to put your first song as going to be one of the hits. Smoking in the Boys' Room was the next song, and everybody kind of is familiar with that and the success that it had. The next song on the album is called Louder Than Hell. Now, this song is my absolute number one favorite song on the album. It's got that killer dance beat. There won't be a girl on the dance floor that doesn't swing her hips to it. It's got killer vocal, extremely difficult vocal segments in the song, and it's one of my personal favorites to perform for some of those reasons that, I just feel like it's an impressive song. If my voice was going out for any reason, if I was having a bad night, it's the kind of a song that's difficult enough that I'd have to remove it from the set, because you really got to have your voice in shape on that song.
Andy, what's your thoughts, Andy, on this one?
Well, Louder Than Hell, so far, I think he's been pretty spot on. City Boy Blues, I like that song. It's just not a good lead-off song in there. Louder Than Hell is my second favorite on the album. You'll get to it later, my favorite, but I agree with you. Louder Than Hell, it gets you going. It's a great song. The one thing I will say about City Boy Blues, though, it is a good sing-along song in the car with no one else around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like Louder Than Hell. Very good song. And Andy just mentioned, too, that City Boy Blues is a good sing-along song, if anything else. It's a good sing-along song in the car.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing about Louder Than Hell, the band still plays it to this day when they're doing live shows. I don't know if they play it every show, but I've been told anyway that they do, around the country in this current tour that they're doing. And when I listen to the words and listen to the story, I think, and I don't know this, but I think it's definitely a song that was inspired when Nikki Sixx was thinking about Vince Neil's time in jail. If you listen to the words, what it sounds to me like is he's describing the various subgroups that you might find in a prison. Some like violence, some like submission, some use aggression. He's describing these different groups of people that Vince Neil found himself thrown into a large community, forcibly required to live amongst, whatever number of hundreds or even thousands of complete and total strangers. And, Nikki Sixx has talked about, the experience that Vince went through caused him to think about what that must be like and to write about it. And I don't know for fact, but I think Louder Than Hell is one of those songs that he's talking about where he got his inspiration for it.
Awesome.
So the next song after that is Keep Your Eye on the Money. And what can I say? I think that's a really good song. Good beat. I can only tell you my opinion because I'm just a fan like everybody else. And, what do I know?
Yes.
So the next song is Tonight We Need a Lover. That's probably my least favorite song on the track. Use It or Lose It, kind of in the middle somewhere. Not one of my favorites, not the worst song. The next song is Save Our Souls, and I really like that song. It's got such a cool tempo, got a very eerie vocal tied in with it, very eerie guitar, very interesting tune. To me, anyway, it kind of shows a range of musical ability that these guys really do have. It's not just three guys banging on guitars and drums and making noise with it. That's a song to me that really kind of puts Motley Crue and Nikki Sixx and Mick Mars in a real strong category of songwriter. There's some harmonies and intricacy there. That's not just your basic 3-chord song. The next song on it is a track called Raise Your Hands, kind of an acoustic vibe, but has a fast vocal. One of the things about Motley Crue that I've always thought was that Nikki Sixx writes his words and lyrics to have, a lot of them have a really fast delivery. I mean, if you think about, the big hit Dr. Feelgood, it's a real fast vocal delivery, but it might be layered over a song that's not real fast, where the music is, of a more medium tempo. That's kind of how Raise Your Hands occurs to me. Fight for Your Rights is another song. It kind of falls in the middle category for me. It's okay. It's nothing I got all that excited about. But it's not a bad song. But it's one of those songs. It's the last song on the album, and I could see why that one didn't become a hit. So that's it. 10 songs on the album, 35 minutes, straight ahead rock and roll for the most part.
Yeah, like you said, Keep Your Eye on the Money. That's my favorite song on the album. My least favorite song, obviously, that'd be Smoking in the Boys' Room. Maybe I got just sick of it on radio and stuff all the time. I think Brownsville Station did a much better version. I've heard other versions too, but that song seemed like it was kind of thrown in there too, in a way. Like for MTV, they did the song and the video.
Yeah, that Brownsville Station version really was a big hit. I mean, I always liked that song, and that's one of those perfect songs that by the time Motley Crue may have, that by the time they remade it, that's one of those songs where it might have been a little bit forgotten. It had been years ago that it had been a hit, and there was a whole new younger generation of, teenagers listening to Motley Crue. So that's a song that kind of came back up for them. One thing people ask me about Theater of Pain is, am I like a huge fan of that album? Is that why I named my tribute band Theater of Pain? The reason why I named my band Theater of Pain wasn't because of the album necessarily, but because of the album artwork. I've seen there's a lot of Motley Crue tribute bands around the country. There's, one in Philadelphia, there's one down in Texas, there's one in Phoenix, and so I needed to pick a name of a Motley Crue tribute name that would work well, that number one isn't already being used. There used to be a Motley Crue tribute band in Minneapolis and Minnesota called Wildside, which no longer exists, but right. I felt like I could have used it, but I decided not to, which is also the name, obviously, another album. But I mean, there's just a lot of reasons why I like the artwork that goes on the cover of Theater of Pain, and I thought it would make a cool, motif to create for a tribute band title. But, the album Theater of Pain, I got to be honest with you, when it came out, I probably didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to the other songs on the album, just I was aware of the hits. But yeah, it's a great album as I listen to it. There's, some really good tracks on there.
You talk about the album cover, comedy and tragedy being on the album cover there. And to me, that is one of their better album covers. Yeah, Shout the Devil is kind of cool, and Wildside, wasn't cool, don't get me wrong. But this one, because it showed they were trying to get away from the image of LA bands that they're kind of roped into. They wanted to kind of separate themselves, get a little more mainstream, which they did. So they came out with an album cover, didn't have them on it, and that's what I kind of liked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of thought, I guess, trying to get into their heads just a little bit, they've always been a little bit artistic, obviously Too Fast for Love has that iconic picture of Vince's crotch, and he's got all his bracelets on and whatnot. And then, Girls, which is actually after this one, is a picture of him sitting on motorcycles. So I mean, a lot of the cover artwork and photos and whatnot, like any other band, it's pictures of the band. And Theater of Pain, those masks are kind of a iconic pair of symbols from everything from Mardi Gras in New Orleans to Metropolitan Opera in New York. It's just kind of in my mind anyway, it's an ode to, something completely different than what you might expect from just a straight ahead rock and roll band,
Well, and also this was in 85 when it came out. You could do something pretty safe for an album cover, because 85 era is when the PMRC was out there ripping every rock band there was. So if they didn't go with the crotch shot like on Too Fast for Love and everything else, they can kind of go under the radar, get out of their firing line. So good move on their part.
It's definitely not smell the glove.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, there was one more, they got targeted, PMRC mentioned something as Smoking in the Boys Room. They came after them a little bit for that, for bad references, for bad influence on the youth of America, and it's all that stuff. But they went after Twisted Sister and Wasp and everything else. But that's right. The album itself, the cover, they stayed away from the cover, and we're forced to kind of go in deeper to the album.
Well, Wasp was kind of asking for it too, though.
Wasp, was kind of asking for it, I think. Now, what are your guys' thoughts? I'd like to get your thoughts on this, as I'm not, a country western fan, but Carrie Underwood did the cover of, Home Sweet Home back in 2009. She did a cover of the song, and it became a big hit. What's your guys' thoughts on that? I'll start with Jeff. Oh, okay.
A bunch of country albums. Some country artists did cover some Motley Crue songs. Most of them were all terrible. That's just my opinion. And I kind of had my country music phase there for a while. They were all pretty terrible.
And Jeff, what Andy's talking about is that album. There was a tribute album by country western music artists that they did a tribute to Motley Crue. What was the name of that album? We did a review on that at one point, Andy.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is offhand.
It wasn't that good, but they all showed their appreciation for the rock scene, and they all 9 or 10 different groups did songs of Motley Crue.
I'm not a country fan by any stretch whatsoever. I have not followed or paid any attention to it. I try not to be a hater about it. So I do recall wasn't there some other bands, not just Motley Crue, but they did kind of the same thing with some other ones. And maybe it wasn't just country bands, but I know there's been, like various rock artists that they all did a cover of, like Black Sabbath songs. Sebastian Bach doing, Sweet Leaf or something, along those lines. I wasn't aware of this, what's her name in the country world?
Carrie Underwood.
But
here's the track listing for that one.
I mean, I've heard of her.
Yeah, Andy's got the track listing. Let's run it by Jeff and see what he thinks.
The album was called Nashville Outlaws, a tribute to Motley Crue. Kickstart My Heart by Rascal Flatts. If I Die Tomorrow by something called Florida Georgia Line. Leanne Rimes did Smoking in the Boys Room. Justin Moore and Vince Neil did a duet for Home Sweet Home. Chastity Pope did The Animal in Me. Aaron Lewis did Afraid. Big and Rich did Same Old Situation. Claire Brown did Without You. Eli Young Band did Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away. Lauren Jenkins did Looks to Kill. Cadillac 3 did Live Wire. I have not heard of, I've only heard like 2 of these country artists so far. Mavericks did Dr. Feelgood.
This is like one of those things where, okay, part of my brain wants to ask for the name of this album so that I can maybe get a copy of it, or just borrow it or something. And then part of my brain says to me, don't do it, because once you listen to something like that, you can't unhear it. You know what I mean? It ends up, it could be a big mistake to look.
Right.
You can't unsee something like that once you've seen it, right?
Correct. Correct.
Now,
but so you guys have listened to it. What'd you think?
Gretchen Wilson did Wild Side, and I'm kind of partial to Gretchen Wilson, so that's really the only song I liked on that album. The wife and some other family members are country music fans, so they hadn't heard of most of these artists on there. So I don't know if there were studio musicians who were trying to get their big break being on this album or something, but it was, I don't know if Nikki Sixx and Vince all did it for the money or what, but it was not good.
So did the album sell well? Did country music fans snap it up like
Nope.
hotcakes, or did it just flounder big time and it was a huge mistake?
it was a mistake and a waste of time and money.
Yeah, it didn't do too well.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, just on the face of it, I would think that a lot of your hardcore country music fans wouldn't even give it a chance if they were told that we're doing a bunch of Motley Crue songs. And probably much in the same way, a lot of hardcore Motley Crue fans wouldn't give it a chance either.
Right.
I don't want to hear a bunch of country people wrecking my favorite songs.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can see like of the two groups of people that they would want it to appeal to, I can see neither group being turned on about the prospect of it.
Yeah. Now, one question for you, Jeff. When you decide to want to do a tribute band, Motley Crue stuff, did you have to get any okay from the band or anybody else to be doing their songs like this and kind of using their likeness, or not using their likeness, but using their own cover on that?
So the one thing that's kind of infamous is when people use songs by Metallica. They have a staff of lawyers that goes after people. Motley Crue is pretty much the exact opposite. Motley Crue encourages people to do tribute bands, and they have no problem with it. As a matter of fact, in the movie you were talking about, The Dirt, there's a lead singer on all of the remade tracks who's the lead singer of a Motley Crue tribute band based in LA, and he's the one they hired to do the vocal tracks. So obviously there's a kindred spirit there. So I have not heard of anybody having any problems with it. And this is actually the second Motley Crue tribute band that I've been in.
Okay.
The first Motley Crue tribute band that I was in was before COVID, and it was called Motel 6. And the reason why it was called Motel 6 was because the bass player in that band had kind of had the startup claim on it. He was one of the guys that kind of started that whole project. And his story that he always told was that he had met all the guys in the band back before they made it, because he was in the Navy at San Diego, and they would go up to LA on the weekends to see Motley Crue every chance they could, because somebody in the platoon had just said this band was awesome, you got to go see it. And so the bass player in this Motel 6 band would frequently tell stories of the times he's hung out with Nikki Sixx. Specifically was the guy that he actually spent the most time around. When they were on their farewell tour in 2015, supposedly he bought a bass guitar from Nikki Sixx, right in their hotel room and everything in Minneapolis. But be all that as it may, his take on it was that, Nikki Sixx and the rest of the band, they think the more tribute bands out there, the better. They love it.
That's great.
Makes sense.
You look at Journey. That's how they replaced Steve Perry.
Yeah, and also, everybody knows the story of Judas Priest. The movie Rockstar was based on it. I've had numerous people tell me that Vince Neil's singing is so horrible now that they should just get somebody else, and why don't I send him a tape? And I'm like, hey, you give me an address for Nikki Sixx, I'll send him my tape. Next time you're talking to Nikki Sixx at lunchtime, let him know my name.
Now, they say the guy who's replaced Mick Mars, Johnny 5 or something like that?
We'll see him in live. It's been kind of a major disappointment for a lot of people, which makes me look better because, when I sing it, people are like, you sound better than Vince Neil. Well, it's not hard to do really these days, but I try to sound just like the record. As a tribute band, I'm not trying to recreate what they do or did. I'm not trying to put my own spin on it. I'm trying to sound just like the record that you've all heard on the radio with each and every song that we do. Our guitar player has the same philosophy. He doesn't make up his own guitar solos, tries to play note for note just like what it was on the radio. We all do in the band.
Yeah.
As a tribute, I think a lot of tribute bands are that way.
I love that. Personally, I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, where
Andy,
are you guys going to be playing next?
Andy, what was the question you had?
Where are you guys going to be playing next?
What was that?
Where are you guys going to be playing next? Upcoming shows?
Oh, we've got a small club date down in Zumbrota, Minnesota on the Wednesday night. I've never been to this place. They tell me it's a great party. Some place called the Guilty Goose in Zumbrota, Minnesota, down on, it's on 52 on the way to Rochester, I believe. And then we're in St. Paul, January 21st at Shamrocks, down on 7th Street. And we're in Winona at a big place called the Black Horse. That's a big college town. Back to Shamrocks again, April 7th. Back to the Black Horse, April 15th. And, of course, I'm always working on other dates. Got a lot open. All of us in the tribute band are in other bands, so we have to coordinate with our schedules. I'm in another cover band called Second to None, and we play, a couple times a month in that band. But, I'm really looking forward to doing a lot more in 2023 and getting this thing pushed out there.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Now, what is your contact information for the band, or Facebook page or Twitter account?
On Facebook is the only place that we are right now, and it's Theater of Pain, and the theater is the RE version,
Okay.
not ER.
Okay.
Theater of Pain,
Awesome.
MN.
Okay, Theater of Pain, the RE version, MN on Facebook is where you can reach out and
Yep.
get to know these guys. Awesome.
Yep, you can see videos there and see whatever updates we have to our schedule coming up. And I will post when you send me a link of this podcast, I'm going to put it there.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Well, then, anything else, Andy, from Theater of Pain,
No,
or with Jeff here?
just real quick, like we said earlier, the Brown Street version was better. That reached number 3 on the charts. Motley Crue's version only got to number 16.
So 3, the original song reached as high as 3 on the charts, and Motley Crue's was 16. Okay, interesting.
Oh, I'm smoking in the boys' room?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Huh. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Motley Crue is no dummy. They picked a song that was a hit.
Yep.
Yes.
Remake.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you guys having me on. I got to cut it short here and let you go.
All right. Thanks for your time, Jeff.
You guys having me on, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Awesome. We'll look to see you live there in the future at one of your shows, but thanks again for your time tonight.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Andy, so what else have we got for concerts, updates, tours, albums?
Well, we just have to refresh some of our stuff from last week to some of our local favorite bands we got here. Just Medina. We'll go through Medina Entertainment Center's list of stuff here. Coming up again this weekend, Thunderstruck with Arena will be there.
That's tomorrow, right?
Yep. Tomorrow night. The 28th, Taking It to the Limit, an Eagles tribute band, which we, like I said earlier, country artists did a bunch of Eagles songs. Okay, that I could see. It's kind of the same type of music. So they were pretty good. November 29th, the Four Horsemen, a Metallica tribute band with them pesky kids.
Okay.
The 12th of November, Trilogy at The Doors, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd. Those 3. And of course, like we said, December 10th, Hairball. Our friends Hairball.
That should be good. That's going to be on our website. We got that listed on the calendar as well. check out the calendar for other events and things that we've got going on here at Sports and Songs. But we're glad to have Jeff on. I love tribute bands. It's good to have these kind of guys on, these local guys, and love it. I can't wait to see these guys perform.
Yeah, I like them too. I like the tribute bands, like I said, when they try to keep the sound the same too. They don't make it their own. Then you're not a tribute band. Then you're just karaoke night guy. Then when you make it your own. So
that's true. That's true. All right, guys, have a good week. We'll see you next week on our songs edition of Sports and Songs podcast.
All right. Thanks. We'll see you guys.
All right. See you.